maybe we can start. Unfortunately, it was announced that Sebastian Steinbus will participate, but unfortunately, he has an appointment that he could not reject, and for this reason, he cannot stay here. But we have Christoph Mertens from IDSA. Thank you, Christoph, for making you available in a short notice. And Christoph is going to present the Dataspace, to introduce and present the status of the Dataspace Protocol. And then we have Nicolas Auricino. Is it correct, Nicolas? From Evivian?
Welcome. Yes, don't worry.
And Arian, I am not going to say your surname, Arian from Ionos.
No worries.
Welcome.
I mean,
Arian.
6 months of working together didn't help, right?
No, sorry for that.
No problem.
And then also Arnold, okay, from SAP, that accepted to join us in the last minute because Matthias could not do. So during this session, this tech talk, okay, first, let me just remind all of you that thank you to the research projects that we are participating. We can support most of our activities, and this tech talk is one of us that these projects support us. Okay. And here you can see the agenda. We will start with Christoph presenting the Dataspace Protocol and the TCP status. So just provide an overview of the Dataspace Protocol and also Eclipse and the roadmap for developing it. Then Nicolas will provide us a view from the technological foundations of the Dataspace Protocol, explaining us how simple Open Agent complies with the Dataspace Protocol. And then we will move to the service provider perspective with Arian and explain how Dataspace protocols are relevant for ICT providers. And after Arno Weiss from SAP will join us a little bit late to explain us an industrial implementation, how Dataspace Protocol can support industrial dataspace. After these interesting presentations, we will have a slot where you can raise your questions to the speaker. Please use the chat questions and answers field, or just unmute yourself and talk and ask your questions to the speaker. And please, Christoph, I give you the floor to introduce us to the Dataspace Protocol.
Perfect, will do. Let me share my screen so I have the slides control on my side. So hello and welcome everyone. I hope you're not too disappointed to not have Sebastian. I know it's impossible basically to replace him, especially when it comes down to the technical side of things. I still will try to give you a comprehensive overview over the general topic of the Dataspace Protocol. I plan not to go too deep on this end because I think most of you already are familiar with the general topic of DSP. So I will try to rather give you an overview where we stand, what is the status, and where we are planning to go with this in the near future. So the short introduction. If you think about data spaces, I think the topic of connectors, I hope it is familiar to you. For those of you who are with us already since quite some time, you remember that in the early days, we thought about the connector as the single point of truth when it comes to communication between two participants in a data space, also including the actual sharing of data itself. In the meantime, what you can see here on the slide, we decided to separate and differentiate between two planes. One is the control plane, where the connector still is a relevant topic. So what I will also show you, the communication that happens thanks to the Dataspace Protocol, with saying hello to each other, introducing the different policies, and agreeing or disagreeing on them is something that happens between two connectors, whereas the actual payload is shared in a way that you basically can agree upon. If you, I always take this as an extreme example, I know it's probably not the right one, but to make a point here, if the two parties agree the way to share the data is taking a USB stick and sending it via mail, that is absolutely fine. It is really up to the participants how to share the data once agreed upon the different policies and coming to a digital contract. So why this is so important is basically melting down to 4 aspects that also can be seen from different viewpoints. I will show you another one that motivates this in a second, but first the 4 points that make the protocol so essential. First is about the aspect of data sovereignty. So the terms and conditions that you want to put on your data, so the usage policies, is something that you can define and communicate with other participants of data spaces thanks to the protocol. The second aspect is interoperability. So you can achieve this via standardized data exchange formats and other protocols that you refer to. I also should give you a quick overview about this later. Third point is growth and scalability. So thanks to the fact that the kind of communication is standardized, also interoperability with other participants in data ecosystems that rely on exactly the same formats is something that is given, and therefore you also can start communicating with other participants, even though the initial use case that brought you to a data space might not include those partners. So it's something that is also foreseen for the N+1 use case, actually. Fourth point, the aspect of semantic interoperability. So here we have also the chance to hook in different domain-specific ontologies into the Dataspace Protocol. So the DSP itself does not provide you with the actual domain-specific semantics with which you would like to describe your data, but it allows you to connect your domain-specific aspects with it. And this brings us to the next slide. So 4 basic aspects that you might want to keep in mind if you ask yourself why the protocol is so essential. I said you can see it from different angles. So if you feel that the different acts that are put to place now or in the near future by the European Commission are a good motivation for you to change things in your IT. Here you see the Data Act or the Dataspace Protocol through the glasses of the Data Act. Concretely, Article 33 talks about certain aspects that, in the meantime, with the last slide in mind, should sound partly familiar to you. So the aspect of interoperability, machine-readable formats, also APIs that help you to go into data exchange, smart contracts, I called it before, usage policies, which are negotiated and lead to smart contracts, is something that is also referenced, and the use of harmonized standards. How much of a standard the Dataspace Protocol is something I will show you in a bit when I talk about the perspective and the state of play. But these are basically the aspects that are addressed in one way or the other in the Dataspace Protocol and relate, as you can see, heavily to the Data Act in this concrete example here. So interoperability seems to be a core topic here for why we came up with the protocol. But also be aware of the fact that when we talk about interoperability and say the DSP is a solution for this or a part of it, please keep in mind that it really is a part of it. It is not solving the entire thing. So the protocol is not the only solution that you will need in order to be fully interoperable with other players in data spaces or beyond, because actually the protocol itself focuses on, you could say, 2 levels. So the technical level for sure, and also the semantic level up to a certain point. I said already, when it comes to the domain specifics, the Dataspace Protocol does not provide you with ontologies or schemes that you have to follow, but it provides you with a foundation on which top you can then start deploying your domain-specific ontologies. And this is also the focal point for the DSP. The levels above that you can find in the European interoperability framework also have to embrace the organizational interoperability and the legal interoperability, both of which are something that the DSP is not providing to you. But let's look for a second into the two layers that it does tangle. So the technical interoperability, talking about standardized connectors, policy enforcement, transfer process agreements. All of these three things are given by the Dataspace Protocol. For the policy enforcement, for example, with ODRL as the language in which everything is described policy-wise, and I think DCAT as a format, you can easily define the policy, so the rules and the conditions under which you agree to share your data with others. And in this process of communication of two participants, also what you will negotiate on in case someone requests your data or you think you would like to send it to someone because a service that is provided on the other side could be of use for you. And this is also what will be enforced by, in the first step, coming up with contracts which are in the Data Act called smart contracts that are coming to where the agreements come to place by negotiating by the policies that you were defining before. On the semantical interoperability side, so the need for common data models. Here we are using, for example, JSON LD, RDF as formats that are used in context of describing the data sets, but also this meta standard idea. I already teased it. It is just there to help you to define what kind of source do you provide, what is the intended use, what are the constraints. All these things are defined, but the domain specifics are not. But the support for domain specifics is there, and I think I repeated myself in this field already at least 2 or 3 times. So, but that is the view on the semantical interoperability layer. So IDSA is the association that came up with this idea thanks to the support and help of many of our close partners and members, which you can see here on the left side, who helped us to define the specifications of the Dataspace Protocol, pointing to all the different aspects and defining them that I teased before. And there's also already a quite comprehensive list of projects and companies who are using the Dataspace Protocol or intend to use it. And also, so this is like here companies T-Systems or ZF, Amadeus, VTT, or Solvity, Ionos as well. So Ariane probably will talk about this in a second, but also projects like Catena X or the Smart Middleware project, Simple, Open in this case, are either using it already or intending to use it in the future source code that will come up from Simple Open. Also project-wise, for the R&D world, there is already a handful of projects that are making use of the protocol, helping us to test what we already have put to specifications and into first versions of test and compatibility kits. So if you are working in projects that are intending to create data spaces, please feel free to reach out to us in order to join also this list in case you are intending to use the DSP or are maybe already using it. Here, a quick overview over how the different worlds come together. So there's a certain process. I already said something about standards. I think the use of standards, which is also reflected in the Data Act itself, is a very good motivation to create internationally agreed standards, but also even before that, before we heavily aligned Data Act and such, we were sure about the fact that international standardization is important to create scalability and acceptability of the things that we are defining. And in order to take the motivation to make it concrete here from the Data Act and bring it to standards, there are basically three things required. So first, here the interpretation of the Data Act and translation into concrete specifications is something that we already took care of. The IDS community came up with these specifications and brought it to the Eclipse Foundation in order to further process it. The second pillar will be what is called here starter kit. So many companies are working on concrete implementations of what is written down in the specifications. Here with the examples of what will come out of the Dataspace Support Center and Simple Open, which I already mentioned to you. And third, the building of a test and compatibility kit for those out there who want to follow the specifications but are not using the reference implementations, because you're totally free to build your own implementations here, still have to test if it is compatible with the specifications, which is achieved by using the TCK. So it's a crucial element. And with these three elements, also the path towards standardization is paved. And this is something that we are already walking on. I show you this in a second with a state of play. In case you're interested in the different projects, so specifications and also the TCK, you can browse either one of these web pages to get deeper insights into the specifics, where we stand, and so on and so forth. Feel free to scan these QR codes either right now or also later. I also have another slide for you with an overview over the different sources that you might want to consider looking deeper into. So I promised status of Dataspace Protocol and also this important resources slide. So in case you're more on the technical side, of course, the GitHub sources matter probably most for you. Here you find the link on the very top or in the QR code to the very repository in which you can also start posting your issues. So in case you find things that are not working well, or if you have other comments or just would like to reflect with the community on this, the issue tracker is enabled for the project already, so feel free to make plenty of use of it to give your feedback. There are also, in case of communication, mailing lists available. You find the link here on the slide, or a more human-friendly, readable version of the truth on the Eclipse page. So feel free to look into this in case you would like to read it. Then a download section and an archive are also available, and there are frequent calls for the closed community and also the committers happening regularly. In case you're already onboarded, I think you're aware of it. In case you're not onboarded and interested, please look into the specifics, how to become onboarded here. Maybe we also can tackle this in the Q&A session in more depth. Status-wise, I also have a slide with different milestones, but here already like the achieved two first milestones, which is the formal improvement of the specifications and the project by the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group and the instantiation of the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group, which is done, and also the initial contributions. As you can see here in this heartbeat chart on the right bottom, I would say we are in a healthy state when it comes to number of participants, which is 4 core organizations with 7 persons contributing to the project. Also, as you can see, constantly contributing. As always, the more the merrier. I think also here the aspect of inviting you to not only give it a look, but reflect on the DSP itself is something that I would like to place. And the already mentioned test and conformance kit, the TCK, is already available in a free version, so to say, 0.10, which you can find also here under the link in the GitHub repository or via the QR code. And this is, of course, not this is of course not where we stop. I tried to put you the DSP related milestones in context with also the other things that we as IDSA community are driving, like reference architecture 5.0, which of course heavily reflects on the DSP as one of the core assets here. Also certification, a topic that is with us already since a long time. And what you can see here is what I mentioned with TCK in the first draft already delivered. Currently, we are in this phase of progress review, which I think is expected until end of February. So that gives the thing like today and tomorrow to finish it up. But this is something that is already ongoing and status-wise looks very good to be delivered. Then beginning of Q2 of this year, we can expect a second alpha version of the TCK, which also then will again be brought to a second round of release reviews for this before then going into a beta status for the DSP candidate. Later this year, so towards the middle, also other aspects of the stack, and I think that's something we can take in the Q&A part. The DSP by itself, I mentioned it, is not enough in order to reach interoperability and have a working tech stack. Also things like the decentralized claims protocol driven by the GaiaX community are of essence, and we position it also here to make to give a direction on where and when to expect this. So I would say, as an overview, this is more than enough. I would love to hand over back to you, Sylvia, to guide us through the rest of the agenda and also hand over to the more practical aspects of DSP.
If you can go to the next slide.
Sorry,
I will use
it.
Okay.
Yes, no problem. 1 second. There it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So next speaker, Nicolas Auricino. Thank you for joining us and your availability to explain us the experience of implementing the Dataspace Protocol as part of simple open agents. So, Nicolas, can you share your screen? The floor is yours.
Yes. Sure.
Thank you.
I think it's the wrong one.
It's the presenter mode, but
retry. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, thanks, Sylvia. So first, I want to maybe re-explain for the audience who might not all know what Simple is about. So we put in context a bit. So Simple is actually the name of a program funded by the European Commission that is composed of 3 products. One that is called Simple Open, and that is the actual open source middleware that will support Cloud to Edge Federation and enable major initiatives. So it's the actual product middleware open source. While then you have Simple Labs, which is a playground environment for adopters or early adopters to try out Simple Open and see if it fits their business needs. And finally, Simple Live, which are distinct deployment of Simple Open in production for selected sectoral data spaces funded by the Commission. So here what I want to focus on is the first one, so the actual middleware Simple Open. So what does Simple Open bring to the table that does not exist yet today? So first of all, today you have a lot of components that are out there to support the creation of a data space. However, there is a vast land of components, and it's not always easy for people who might not have the deep technical knowledge to integrate these components together and build a data space with it. So the first thing that Simple really wants to bring is a solution that puts all those components together in a complete software stack that can be used to build a data space. So the idea is not to reinvent the wheel. The idea is to take promising products that already exist today, such as connectors, catalogs, etc., and bring them together in a cohesive software suite. Of course, where pieces are missing to make the link between these components or to bring extra features that are part of the simple requirement, we develop these components from scratch when it does not exist. Secondly, we embed security from the start, and we ensure that we have a secured mesh of agent. And to be part of that mesh of agents, you need to be onboarded and join the mesh through onboarding functionalities that are provided by the middleware itself. Next, we do want to be flexible to accommodate any business. So the idea of Simple is to be generic enough to be used by any type of business, not be specific to one. And for this, we want to maximize the number of elements that can be customized or configured when you use Simple. So things like rules for onboarding participants or the ontologies that you configure in your catalog, etc. Everything can be customized when you use Simple. Another innovation that is coming with Simple is the inclusion of new type of participants. So in the classical landscape of data spaces where you would have data providers and consumers, we complement that with application providers and infrastructure providers, so that we could build an entire data value chain by combining services offered by those three type of providers and giving the possibility, for example, to consume an infra offering from an infra provider, such as a virtual machine, on which an application offered by an application provider who has, for example, a nice analytics application, it could deploy this application on the VM of the infra provider and connect the thing to the data set offered by the data provider and offer to the consumer, for example, indirect access to the data through the application or through the infra that has been provisioned. And lastly, we improve data sovereignty by offering the possibility within Simple to define access policy, usage policies, and contracts. Of course, all in accordance with the Dataspace Protocol. We'll come back on that later. So that's a bit what makes Simple special or new in the landscape of data spaces. Now we have released a minimum viable product last month. Let me summarize a bit what you can do with that MVP. So first of all, you can configure, as I was explaining earlier, your own schema and vocabulary within the catalog that we provide in the middleware. You can onboard your participants, whether they are consumers, providers, through functionalities that are provided by the middleware. For the moment, as it is an MVP, of course, we are still on a manual process, but that will be extended to automate all these things, to use verifiable credential, etc. You can, as a provider, publish, of course, your service offerings, whether it is a pure data offering, whether it is an infra offering, or whether it is a combination of both, that we also call bundle, to the catalog of the data space. Once you have published your offerings to the catalog, as a consumer, you can query that catalog. You have a search client that allows in a user-friendly way to see what's available from the catalog. And once you have found an offering that is to your liking, you can, of course, request to use that offering. And for that, you can establish a contract to consume the service. Here again, following the Dataspace Protocol and the contract negotiation more specifically. Once a contract has been established, what Simples allow you to do as well is for the provider to provision the resource. So either it is purely data or it is infra or a combination of data, infra, and even pre-built application. That is a functionality offered by the middleware. And once it has been provisioned, you can as well provide to the consumer all the details you need to access the resources provisioned. And yeah, the consumer just get access to what he has contracted. So that's in a nutshell what you can do with Simple. So now, looking a bit more from an architecture angle, you can find all that published online, the architecture complete of Simple, in which we describe as well the principles on which Simple is built. And I just want to highlight 3 of those principles, which are interoperability. So we follow an API first approach that is favoring the possibility to integrate easily Simple Open with already heterogeneous systems where you can bring in your own components. We build Simple following an open and agnostic way, so meaning that we follow open specifications and standards. That's where, again, the Dataspace Protocol and other standards come into play. So we really want to build Simple, not based on technologies, but more based on standards and protocol. Of course, we do provide reference implementation of those standards and protocols, because the idea is to offer new players or more greenfield comprehensive set of components which can be used to build a dataspace more easily. But if you have already existing components in your landscape, or you already have a dataspace and you want to see how Simple can be plugged, the idea is that you don't need to use the entire tech stack of Simple, but you rather just need to be compliant with the standards and the technology on which Simple is built. And if you are, then you can bring in your components. And lastly, the modularity principle, because we have built Simple and small modular components, so that if you bring in your components, it's easier for you to replace certain modules with your own ones, as long as they are compliant with, again, the standards and protocols that are being used by Simple. So about those standards and protocol, I have put here on the slide what Simple implements or plan to implement. You will see them with a small asterisk next to it. And that constitutes the key technical specification for building your data spaces. So as part of the standards that we are implementing, we support DCAT, we support ODRL, and actually we support any type of catalog, because, as I was mentioning, we can customize the vocabulary and schemas that are used in Simple. So whether you want to bring DCAT, you want to bring DCAT AP, you want to bring any ontology, you can do so. ODRL, we use RDF for specific semantic logic. We will use in future verifiable credential and presentation for exchanging identities and attestations. And we will use decentralized identifiers. We are compliant with the Dataspace Protocol, so there it's very important we implement the different parts of the protocol. First, when registering to the catalog assets, a provider will register it using the Dataspace Protocol, and we also provide extensions so that we can publish also offerings as self-descriptions following GaiaX trust framework there. We implement the contract negotiation to get contract agreements on service offerings, and then the transfer protocol. I will explain in a bit the technologies that we use for that. In future, we'll also use identity claims protocol. First one on the list being OpenID Connect for VC and VP, and conformity assessment policy and financial profile. So those are the technical foundations that are supported and implemented with a reference implementation by Simple Open. And of course, you need to couple that then with the legal aspect and the domain-specific choices. So coming back a bit on the picture that was presented earlier with the 4 layers, right? We are more at the 2 at the bottom, and then you still have to take care of the 2 at the top. And by combining all those elements, you have your entire rulebook to build your Dataspace initiative. So a word about the technologies that we are using to implement that. So what is, of course, the most interesting from a Dataspace Protocol angle is that we use an already existing connector that is compliant with the Dataspace Protocol, and which is the IDSA connector. So IDSA connector is at the core of Simple. We use it to register assets, we use it for contract negotiation, and we use data planes for the data transfer. So we are fully using it there. But again, I want to reiterate the message that our goal is to really externalize from the connector anything that is not strictly speaking part of the Dataspace Protocol, so that any other connector which would be compliant with the Dataspace Protocol could be plugged in instead of the IDSA. Giving you an example, as part of the contract negotiation part, we in Simple have the requirement of having signatures on the contract, which is not strictly part of it, of the protocol. And for that, we built an extension which calls external components to do this signature, for example. So next to the connector that is the core part implementing the protocol, we use more in Simple. So we use the XFSC suite of tools for different reasons. One, to create the self-descriptions as per GaiaX, and we use the SD tooling to do that. We use the XFSC federated catalog, so of course, all the assets published by providers are still registered in the IDSA following the Dataspace Protocol, but are also published in a federated catalog using GaiaX self-descriptions. We use XFSC signer service and the OCM wallet. As I said earlier, we support more than just data. We support infra provisioning as well. And for this, we bring in Crossplane and Argo CD to support this. And then we have security components such as Keycloak for providing the tier 1 authentication provider and federation. We use EGBCA as certificate authority, and we use Spring Cloud Gateway as authorization layer of Simple. And next to that, we also use the Elastic suite of components to implement monitoring, logging, reporting, etc. Yeah, so to conclude, just a call out that Simple is fully open source. So the source code of everything we develop and reuse is available online at code.europa.eu/simple. You will find not only the code, but also all the installation and user manuals that you might want to use to try out Simple. And releases are also available there to be downloaded. So it's really a call out for everyone to start trying the product. It's there, it's tangible, it's not just promises, so you can touch it. And as simple is meant to be really an open source success. We want to build a community, of course, and for that there are different ways to engage with the community. At the moment, we are still in the early stages, so you can see here on the screen the different ways to contribute or get involved in Simple, which is the entry point, I would say, the website. You can scan the QR code to get all the links. So the website. We also have the code repository, as I was mentioning it just before. We participate to webinars, workshops, just like the one of today. We are present on X and LinkedIn. We regularly launch surveys, and on the website we have a forum where you can bring in your ideas. Of course, a more mature process on how to open community contributions will be released in the near future, but this is yet to come. And before giving the floor back to Sylvia and Ariane, just if you want to be part of the next community event of Simple, this will take place next year in January, so don't hesitate to join us.
Thank you, Nicolas. Very interesting, and yeah, lucky to hear that Simple contribute a lot to the Dataspace community. But now it's time for Ariane. Please, Ariane, can you try to share your screen? And then I have seen a question, but at the end of the presentation, we will have the Q&A, and then we will go through all the questions that you have in the chat. Ariane, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. So thank you, Sylvia, and thank you very much, Nicola. So we are working also in Simple together with very bright people like Nicola. And the name, of course, is very ironic because, I mean, Simple indicates that it's a very simple thing, but Nicola knows how huge and complex of a project this is. But it's good that we are also experimenting with things like Dataspace Protocol in Simple. And I will keep it very short. I will try to... because the time that was assigned to me was until now, but I'll try to keep it very, very brief so we can hand over to the next session. So the session is about the benefits or probably the use cases for service providers when it comes to the protocol. And I would like to start maybe with an example. And this example I borrowed from a very bright lady who's also an expert in the data space domain. So I don't know if Dan is around, but she's always in the events. She's using this example of people are using their mobile phones to communicate to each other. And each one of these mobile phones are built by different companies using different technologies, yet people can talk to each other using different mobile phones. And it's exactly the same for web technologies. Whenever you're using your web browser to access a website, or you're using a mobile application to access something, the technologies are always different. In the back end, on the back of the servers, on the back of each website, there are different programming languages being used and different technologies in place, but still you're capable of using these applications via your web browser, which is also different. I mean, we have different types of web browsers. And the reason you can do that is because the communication in between is standardized. And you have standardized protocols and standardized payloads, so you would understand, your browser would understand what a web server has to say. Also, the web servers, when they want to communicate to each other, they can understand each other, although they may use different technologies in the background. So it's exactly the same for data spaces and data space connectors. I think in the latest IDSA connector report, there should be around 30-something connector, and they're using different technologies. And if these connectors can implement a unified protocol and they can talk in a way that they understand each other, this would make the world a very easier place to live in, right? I mean, you would want to create data spaces, and nowadays you're stuck to specific connectors because these connectors cannot talk to each other. When I was working for IDSA, we had a use case for Hannover Messe, and maybe Christoph remembers that that was a bit of a challenge for us to try to make two different connectors talk to each other. Although back then these connectors were relying mostly on the old Dataspace connector of the IDSA, but still it was a bit challenging. So the communication between connectors using the protocol will be improved, and then it comes to the service providers. So say now we have Dataspace components and connectors. These are relying on a protocol. Maybe the port will be assigned to this protocol, maybe a specific port, maybe not. And this makes it easier for service provider to adopt the technology. And it will also make it easier for them to maintain and support and provide support. Also, when it comes to the security, I mean, thinking about maybe allocating a specific port. By the way, I have a typo in my presentation, ignore it. When it comes to the security, and if we specify port, for example, it could be both positive and negative, right? The positive is that you can train your firewall, you can recognize attack vectors. The negative could also be that specific port might be targeted for more attacks when it comes to the data spaces. But still, it's a good thing to follow on, and I would like to keep it at this point regarding the market value for service providers. If some people are hoping to hear that I would say the Dataspace Protocol would bring a lot of money to service providers, unfortunately today I probably cannot say so. Maybe in some future. But at any case, it will make it much easier for service providers to deal with data spaces. And there are some huge service providers who are offering a lot of connectors as a service or other components as a service. And I can imagine for them having standardizations would bring some profits and some financial benefits as well. I'll keep it at that, and I will leave the floor back to Sylvia, hopefully to maintain the time.
Thank you very much, Arian. And okay. Yeah, you are right that the standardization is crucial to keep the investment that the companies as you are doing on data spaces. And our next speaker is Arnold Weiss from SAP. And he will give us the perspective of another industrial company that all of you know, SAP, on the experience with the implementation of the Dataspace Protocol.
Thanks a lot, Sylvia.
Okay.
Cool, thank you. So this is a pretty spontaneous replacement that I'm doing. Yes, so thanks for the opportunity to speak. My talk probably won't be really as polished as the ones that we just heard. And I'm really thankful to be speaking in this order of Dataspace initiatives. My name is Arno Weiss. I am a committer to the Dataspace Protocol specification Eclipse project. That means I work on the core specification of what the Dataspace Protocol is, together with the group of committers. I'm also a participant and representative of the Catena X project and the Catena X Dataspace, which is a productive ecosystem of mainly the automotive industry that builds upon the Dataspace Protocol as the foundational technology for interoperable data sharing. What I would like to extend to you today is, first of all, the experience that there is with implementing the Dataspace Protocol, and there's a lot of implementations. We've heard all of that, but there's always a couple of caveats and a couple of pitfalls that an implementer has to be aware of. So that's what I want to spend the first section of the talk on. And then I would also like to talk a little bit about where the Dataspace Protocol is going and what you as a dataspace have to do in order to interoperate using it. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Dataspace Protocol as it stands today. We have the IDSA's International Dataspaces Association IDS specification repository. And from this specification repository, you get to this website, which is the state of the Dataspace Protocol 24.1. Dataspace Protocol 24.1 has been out for, as it says, about a year now, and is the latest release that the International Dataspaces Association has done, working on this and specifying and publishing it. Toward the beginning after this release of last year, what happened was that there was a founding of the so-called Eclipse Dataspace Working Group. So you will find this at dataspaces.eclipse.com or .org, I'm not sure. And what you will see there is that in this Eclipse Dataspace Working Group, the different initiatives like GaiaX, like IDSA, like CatenaX, all collaborate to advance the specification and implementation of the foundational protocols of a database. The full list of members, there's also a couple of individual member companies you can see on the webpage of the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group. The Eclipse Dataspace Working Group is amazing because it brings together a lot of the actual productive databases, and it's a great platform to learn from each other. Currently, the Dataspace Protocol the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group comprises a set of specification projects and implementation projects. I think the Eclipse Dataspace components everyone has heard of and has been mentioned a couple of times today already. But what's even more important, I think, is the Eclipse Dataspace Protocol Specification Project, which is advancing and updating the specification of what the Dataspace Protocol is. And because all of that work is happening in public, we can take a look at the current setup. That is the latest unofficial draft that was updated today, earlier. As you can see, you will find a lot of familiar names here in the authors list. And yeah, this is the current working state of the document. There's obviously progress that's happening there, and the group is paying very close attention to the backward compatibility of everything, and at the same time delivering new features in the protocol for everyone who's using it. Implementing the Dataspace Protocol in the past has been a challenge in a couple of settings for a variety of reasons. One of the main reasons for this was the extensive use of the JSON-LD format that sort of gives you a million different ways to say the same thing. Now, if payloads look different, your developers who are very used to work with parsers on the JSON object level are going to be confused quite quickly. And we actually found a lot of, we found that to be an adoption barrier. And that's why one of the reasons we did changes for the upcoming version is that we are now still using JSON-LD, but using JSON-LD according to a fixed JSON schema. So if you look at the catalog example, and I think the catalog is an object that we've all seen before, you can still see that this is 100% valid JSON-LD, but there's now restrictions on how this JSON-LD can be structured, and that is expressed via a JSON schema for that same object. So that's going to give you a type-safe API, while at the same time providing the semantic community with the ability to still parse this as JSON-LD or RDF. So that's going to be one of the biggest changes that are coming up. So that was the first part of what I wanted to share with this group. The Dataspace Protocol is an active specification project, and the Dataspace Protocol is always open for feature requests and improvements, and all of that work is being done under the governance of the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group that IDSA is a part of, and actually the project lead of. So Sebastian Steinbus, who's the CTO of the International Dataspace Association, is also the project lead, as you can see, for the Dataspace Protocol specification under the umbrella of the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group. If you have feature requests, find bugs or whatever, file it in the repository. We're thankful for all your feedback. Now I would like to go on to the second part of my talk. And the second part of my talk deals much more with not what is the Dataspace Protocol foundationally, but how can I use it? And as it is always the case with standards, it's quite easy to say, yeah, I'm implementing standard XYZ. And then when you look closer, people don't actually implement the whole standard, or they implement it in a different way than it's specified, or they implement some old version of it. So it really makes sense to be very specific about how the implementations look and what each and every dataspace has to do in order to become productive. I would like to give you a couple of examples from the specification itself. So earlier, we heard that there is a desired use of did web in simple, for example, or of dids in general. And we can check whether the Dataspace Protocol has something to say about how each dataspace participant is identified. And quite quickly, we will see that, for example, in this catalog response, we will see that in the example, let's take a look here, that you will always have a participant ID here. So every catalog has this participant ID. And if we look at the schemas, we will see that this participant ID is just a string. And because it is just a string, everyone could, from the perspective of the DSP, put everything in there that they want. However, it may make sense and it may be necessary for a dataspace to place some further restrictions on what that participant ID string can be. Could it be, I don't know, like a URI or a did or a Dun & Bradstreet number or whatever? So that's one of the first things that each and every dataspace has to decide, and that each and every dataspace has to align if they want to interoperate with each other. What we have also talked about already is the authentication layer, right? The Dataspace Protocol does not talk about authentication and authorization. It just doesn't. So if we take a look at, for example, what the contract request message looks like in the HTTP binding, we will see that this is the contract request message. So you have a well-defined endpoint on where you can put that payload. But what you don't have is how you can authenticate against that particular endpoint. And that's a challenge because in order for a data provider to tell whether they want to accept or reject a contract request, they will require proof. And that proof will have to be cryptographically verified. And that's why each and every dataspace needs to make sure to specify what to put in this authorization header. In Catena X, we've talked about this extensively. We started off with a centralized identity provider, which was a bad idea because we're not trying to build decentralized architectures. And after that, we went on by implementing a self-sovereign identity-based infrastructure. What the current state of implementation is also public. So I encourage everyone to take a look at the Catena X standards, because the Catena X standards say a couple of things. So, for example, what you will find in here is that there is a normative reference that participant agents, that's connectors, must facilitate data according to the HTTPS binding defined in the DSP. But it also says you have to use this particular number as the participant identifier, and then it says participants have to support a set of transport profiles. That's the data planes that were mentioned earlier already. And it also says how the authentication happens, and that's the decentralized claims protocol. We've taken a look extensively also at other protocols, and we found none of them to be suitable. I highly doubt that other data space initiatives are gonna come to different conclusions there. The OID for VC stack is definitely a candidate, but we are having conversations in the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group as well, to what degree they're actually feasible as an interoperable overlay of identity infrastructure for the Dataspace Protocol. So there's actually a lot of conversations still to be had in that realm. That's basically what I wanted to let everyone know. The key takeaways should be: take a look at the specification of the DSP as it is evolving. That's the first one. And the second one is, if you're building a data space, you will have to define things on top. And be aware of that and make those decisions consciously and ideally in line with existing data spaces. That would be it from my side. Sylvia, back to you.
Thank you, Arno. Very thank you. And also because the short notice for participating on this tech talk, but having you here, it's great. So now I have seen that there was some questions on the chat that was already answered. So if there is any questions, now we enter on the question and answer mode. So let me unmute all of you. 1 second. I need to go to participants.
So there is a question in chat. Why using JSON schema instead of well-defined context and shackle? And the reason is we don't want to force anyone on the semantic web stack. I work in a big company, and in this big company, there's obviously some people who are very familiar with the semantic web stack. We've been working with that for a while. Still, the feedback that we get from developers is always, why is everything a graph? Why can't I just use the technologies that I'm used to, that I've been building software with for a while now, and that we know are performant and that we know are going to scale? So as I said, there is still a way of parsing the Dataspace Protocol payloads as graphs, and that's going to stay there. But we don't want to force anyone to do it. And that's why JSON schema is the selected validation technology in the Dataspace Protocol.
Okay. There are more questions on the chat. I have unmuted all of you. Here we have Messian. Please, if you want, you can unmute and raise your question.
Hello. I'm asking about the manifesto for international dataspace releasing in Q1 of 2025 on the roadmap. I'm just curious the content of it, what will be included.
So this, Christoph, maybe you want to, this manifesto was a position of IDSA regarding what is happening now. And yeah, can you concrete a little bit the question, Masiane? So which is wrong with the manifesto of the roadmap of IDSA?
I'm just, is this an existing public draft or is it yet to be released? I'm just curious about the content.
Yeah, I think it's yet to be released. It's not out there yet, and we're still working on it. Yeah, but we will circulate it as soon as it will be available.
Is the intention for IDSA to provide like additional toolkit for entities outside of the European Union should they want to participate in data spaces? Is this part of a forward plan at all?
So as usually in the IDSA community, we are trying to not focus on the EU perspective only, but also including international perspectives for the manifesto. I think it's rather trying to provide some more perspectives on what to do, what not to do, how do different things go together. For example, we're also facing this trust anchor discussion on an international level. Here in Europe, we always can say IDAS is there, and we accept to use it. But beyond, it's always a bit difficult. And there are initiatives like, for example, in Japan, called Data Free Flow with Trust, which is developing their own perspective on this trust anchor topic. And aligning these different perspectives is the goal.
Okay, I look forward to this roadmap.
I see also, Maxim, that you have a question. Please, can you unmute the,
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually have two questions. Hi, Christophe. I actually have two small questions. One, which is more of a technical detail. So I will start with the more general one. It's probably more addressed to Nicola at this stage. But this is about is to know if in the simple initiative, there is also an idea to provide tools to make it easier to provision data planes. So to adapt to different types of data that you would like to transfer between participants of the data space. So yeah, would there be a tool for such thing, or no, it is assumed that as of today, it will use like the data plane that you have in the Eclipse CDC, and that will handle HTTP types of requests?
So we have requirements to implement specific types of data planes within Simple. So if you look at the architecture, you will see in the high-level architecture the capabilities that we'll support. So today we have simple data transfer, more what you refer, I guess, as HTTP between S3 buckets. But we will support more like streaming. So we will include those, let's say, reference implementation still, but the idea is, of course, that if you have more need than what is mentioned in the high-level architecture, and it is and you want to develop those additional data planes, you can plug them in Simple. Yes. You are talking on mute now. So.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, my second question is super short, so I can leave the floor to others after one. Yeah, afterwards, it's also for you. It's about like, so you mentioned you're using the Eclipse EDC as part of Simple, but you mentioned also other components that you're using, and especially, for instance, service offering, like from what I suppose from GaiaX and their signer. So I suppose that what you are using is a stripped down version of the EDC, where you use mostly the transfer layer.
We use the connector. We don't use the entire framework. We use the connector. So not only the transfer, but we also register assets as DCAT datasets in the connector internal catalog, right? We use the contract negotiation with the control plane, and we use data planes for the transfer. So we actually use the three parts.
Okay, nice. So there is some kind of synchronization mechanism between the internal catalog of the connector and a more global catalog that gathers all the service offerings?
Exactly, yes. When a provider creates a service offering, he registers it first in the catalog as the CAT dataset, and then he publishes it as service description, as a self-description, in the federated catalog, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just want to add to that real quick, because Maxime, you asked about data planes, and there's actually nowhere in the Dataspace Protocol a mention of data planes. You can, as a Dataspace participant, behave 100% compliant to the DSP without implementing a data plane. Now, there may be particular architectural decisions that a company may make that necessary, but from a pure architectural just from the pure spec perspective, that's not necessary. And when you're asking what other data planes are going to be there, the question you're actually asking is what other transfer profiles for the Dataspace Protocol are going to be there. So if you think about, for example, the data address object that's part of the Dataspace Protocol, that will have to be specified. That is specified for HTTP. That's, for example, not specified for Kafka. We have done something in Catena with regards to S3. Still, that's not in the spec. So it's really important to keep aligned there. And as I said, those are topics that should be ideally solved and harmonized under the context of the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group. So if you're willing to participate there, you would be very welcome.
Thank you, Arne. Thank you.
Next is Sotiris, and then we have some questions on the chat. You can unmute yourself, Sotiris.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, no, we can hear you. Perfect.
Thanks. So first of all, congrats for every presenter. I think I enjoyed all the presentations. It was very informative. My question comes in regards of interoperability, because it was I think the most prominent topic on the whole discussion. But so far on the DSP, there is no any kind of protocol or discussion of how the let's say the resolve of any kind of mentions of entities within the DCAT description should happen. Yeah. So this is not covered either by the RAM or the DSP. Is there anything what we should expect as part of the RAM or the DSP in regards of how a vocabulary hub should be integrated in data spaces?
Arno, do you want to answer the question?
Yeah. So
please.
The question of whether a vocabulary hub can be integrated is very much dependent on what that's for, right? So for example, you could have you could imagine a vocabulary hub as a just like database of like semantic descriptions that everyone in the dataspace needs to understand. You could 100% do that. The experience that we've made in Catena is that we built this and no one used it. No one was interested in it, and that's why we called it the semantic hub back then. And that's why we just assume that the standards are implemented and that the semantics of each payload are implicitly known by every piece of software that implements this. The nice part about that is that you have one less central component. You have one less component that requires to be operated by a central facilitator. And in general, that's a good thing, because dataspaces are meant to be decentral, and every service we can get rid of that is a singleton somewhere in the middle, that's a success.
But let's suppose that in case in DCAT we have this property DCAT theme, yeah? And in this case, any kind of participant in a data space can decide to provide their values from a vocabulary. If there is no kind of reference within a data space to somehow resolve the reference of a URI, the whole description of this concept of this whatever entity should exist on the payload of the dataset, yeah? So that means that every participant, every connector on the whole data space should have its own copy of the whole descriptions of these vocabularies. Is this how it is envisioned to work?
Maybe we can take a closer look at the payload, and then I understand better what you're asking. But the implicit assumption that I think you're making is that there is a big graph that everyone ends up doing reasoning on. And again, that's a use case that at least I haven't seen yet. So let's take a closer look at the catalog example, and then you can explain where exactly it is where you would see that. Which DCAT property was it?
I don't think that it's by default on the response of any kind of connector, but it's part of DCAT. So as you said, participants on data space can define their own properties on the payload and extend the schema. So this can happen, yeah. And for instance, one part we can be used, for instance, on the publisher, I think, property, yeah. So one can provide just a string to say that, okay, the publisher is this company, but one can also provide a URI which is coupled with some further descriptive description of this entity, yeah. So if I just refer to the URI, where should I get the full information about this URI? or in the other case, I should include the whole information on the payload.
Okay, I understand. So if you want to define an extension for this, that then requires resolving via a central or whatever third-party component, you can totally do that, but that's outside of the Dataspace Protocol core specification. As I said, it's totally necessary for each dataspace to define things on top. And some of these things on top may actually require additional central services. But what the Dataspace Protocol provides you is that if you have the dataset ID and if you have the offer ID, so for example, this dataset ID and this ID of the offer, then you can just use this ID here and start negotiating for access to that relevant dataset given the circumstances expressed in ODRL. So if you want like additional features, like taking a different path, not straight down the negotiation transfer process road, then yeah, that would have to be defined in additional profiles.
Okay, we have another question on the chat from Jimbo. I don't know if you want to ask the question directly. If not, I will read. Is there any relevant specification of data privacy or privacy computing related things in the Dataspace Protocol? Anyone can answer? I think that, okay. Nicolas, maybe you or Christoph? What I see that the privacy of the data is treated is the negotiation with the policies, with the agreement with the policies that you specify for the data. So I think this is the way to keep when you define your data product and the metadata and you specify the policies, how the data can be used. Then these policies should be part of the negotiation of the data. I don't know if
maybe,
yeah.
Or Nicolas, you want to add on this
Nicolas.
as well?
I cannot comment for sure on what you want to include or not on the DSP, but I do believe that, as you mentioned at the beginning of the call, you are looking at an international angle, not only Europe. And in that sense, I guess it's very difficult to prescribe prescriptive measures for data privacy while spanning different legislative context. When we see already in simple, we need to implement within the context of EU, and we have a very specific set of laws that we need to comply with. It is already very complex, so I can imagine that making something that would be applicable everywhere in the world, it's would be very difficult.
Yeah. Jimbo, is that a sufficient answer to your question? Otherwise, we're glad to try to elaborate a bit more on it, but I think...
Yes. We have another question from Adriana Freitas. Maybe you want to ask, or I can read. The way that data spaces is separate into, does that by any chance improve the generative AI attack in hardware and on data?
I think Arno in the comment section or in the Q&A section already made clear that's sort of on another page. I just would be Adriana, in case you feel comfortable, open your mic, go into this discussion. What do you mean with the separation in two? So the data plane and control plane aspect, or what is the separation that you're pointing to? Yeah, but anyhow, it's on another page, this AI topic. We have another question here in the chat. Sylvia, maybe you want to
Okay. The answer from Arno to this question is that this is the cyber attacks is a different scope, is out of the scope. Okay. And this is for Nicholas. How Dataspace Protocol is implemented now as part of Simple Open? Can you answer that, Nicholas?
Yes. Can the question be specified a bit, because I'm puzzled as I presented 15 minutes on that, so I want to understand a bit what is the specific point that you want to clarify.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes. Hi. Yeah. Good morning. Right. Thank you, Nicola. So, right. So my question was basically to really understand how this protocol has been already implemented, if it's been already implemented, right, as part of the connector, or I mean, what is like I know it's a set of specifications, but do you have any like a tech stack or a component that actually could materialize this set of specifications, right, as part of Simple?
Yes. So we use the EDC connector at the core of Simple,
Right.
and we use it to implement the different parts of the protocol. So we register every offerings in the connector as the dataset. We use the connector to do contract negotiation, and we use the data planes to do the data transfer. So it's really in the connector that this is implemented. Does it answer you?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So so I would assume that it's part of the state machine of the connector, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's still just a bit puzzling to me. Is it in the control plane or the data plane? Which parts?
Wait, which part? Sorry.
Is it in the control plane or in the data plane?
Like what is in the control plane of the data plane?
The implementation itself, like how the protocol has been specified. Is it part of the data or the control or the data plane?
No, more in the control.
More in the control part. Amazing. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe if I could just add something to that, I would echo what I said to Maxime earlier. There is no necessity to have a data plane when it comes to the specification of the Dataspace Protocol.
Right.
What Simple did, I'm not 100% sure, but just looking very superficially at the repositories that were linked, it appears that all of that does some manipulation to the default way that the control plane is behaving. So if you want to speak in EDC terms, it would be the control plane.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Arno. Thank you.
We have time for one more question from the audience. No question? Just unmute yourself or raise your hand. Okay, then I give the opportunity to the speaker to make just a short statement, if you want, before closing. If you want to share something else or some insights with the audience. No, okay. Then I think
maybe just from our side. So I said it also during my presentation. First of all, it's great to have had so many interested people in the call who also were actively asking questions and obviously have an interest in the topic. Please dive deeper into it and also contribute with the opportunities that we created to communicate directly with the community to improve this thing. So issue trackers on GitHub or mailing lists, these are all kinds of ways to get in touch with the community and have a saying in the way it is specified, implemented, and brought to life. And we are always relying on the feedback from practical projects here. So glad to have your opinion also right after this call or later for the success of this DSP project.
And I am sharing with you the next event, so the Dataspace Symposium. So I hope we can meet again during this event to continue discussing about data spaces. So if you are not aware of this event, you can find all the information, the program, and how to register on the link that I have shared on the chat. Thank you, Arnold. Thank you, Nicolas. Thank you, Ariane and Christoph, for staying with us and providing insights about Dataspace Protocol. See you in Poland.
Thank you, everyone, and see you in Warsaw.
Thanks for
Hopefully.
listening.
Bye.
Have a good
Bye.
Thank you to all presenters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Thank you.